We saw today how human flesh was picked up from the streets of Gaza in polythene bags. And it makes you wonder how all of this violence is possible. And it makes you realize your own helplessness. So if there's nothing that we can do, we can at least remember the people of Gaza and pray for the people of Gaza. And may the occupation fall everywhere, in Palestine and in India. I'd like to start with a little story about how I came to work as a researcher for this book, How Long Can the Moon Be Caged? In 2022, right after the COVID lockdown, Francesca and Suchitra reached out to me if I would be willing to work to compile a list of political prisoners in India, to compile a list and to humanize the political prisoner. It seemed like such a weird task. How do we humanize someone who's already a human? But the truth is, in the eyes of the state, in the eyes of the regime, in the eyes of the establishment, if you are in dissent, if you are resisting, if you dare to even light a single candle against the oppression that is happening, you're not human enough. And so this book was an effort to not just give a voice to the political prisoners, but also give a voice to the families of political prisoners who, if not equally, are more brave. And while I was working for this book, while I was reaching out to political prisoners, I was talking to families of political prisoners. In June 2022, my own father was arrested. And for a brief period of time, I was not working for this book. I was away. And when I got back, I had to add my own father's name as one of the political prisoners. Much of the research that I did for this book was lost within the rubbles of my home. And it all makes you realize, when you're sucked into the system, when you're sucked into confronting the criminal justice system, the much celebrated democracy, the largest democracy. And when you're sucked into this system, you realize your own insignificance, you realize your own powerlessness, you realize your own helplessness. So, before we hold anyone else accountable for the violences, for the excesses of state, it is important to hold the Indian judiciary accountable. We have to confront the reality that it is the system that allows for political imprisonment to be possible. I'll give a very personal example. Everyone saw my house come down. It was broadcasted by the national media for 4 long hours. Every single item coming out was publicly visible. Our childhood photos, mark sheets from school, every single item was visible. And 1.5 years later, the police decides that, oh, but we also found a few guns in your house, so we're going to charge, they charged my father with a baseless case of Arms Act. 1.5 years later, it's the system that allows this kind of violence to perpetuate. And when my father was brought in front of the magistrate for him to decide if the case should stand or not, and the sections were all had the sections were all with punishment 7 years or less, and you're not even supposed to arrest people for those cases. but just to prolong his incarceration, just to prolong his time in jail, they allowed that FIR to go through. And this happened when my father had just procured bail in one of his last cases. So this is one example from my family. This book, when you go through the different names mentioned in this book, you will see several examples. This book particularly has, as of now, 309 names of political prisoners, and I'm sure there are more. But it just makes you realize how flawed, how incompetent the judiciary is. The judiciary in several, especially the Supreme Court, in several court orders, in several bail hearings says bail is the norm, bail is the norm, bail is the norm, bail is the norm, bail is the norm. But when political prisoners reach the Supreme Court, after being rejected by the magistrate court, by the trial court, by the lower court, by the high court, and when they finally reach the Supreme Court and ask for something as basic as a bail, the judge who's sitting on the bench says, okay, I'm not going to listen to your case today. I'm going to refer it to some other bench. Not today, not today, not today, not today. And this is the grim reality of political prisoners in India. So another thing that's important to understand is how the Constitution also allows for this violence to continue. Article 21 of the Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of their personal liberty except according to process established by law. What is this process established by law? Is it not UAPA? Is it not sedition? Is it not NSA? So basically there is no crime, there is no illegality. I mean, Sharjeel Imam, if he's in jail for 4.5 years, it is because of the process established by law. And so we just have to accept it as it is. It's a bizarre system that we are forced to live in, and what's even more bizarre is that we think that this is the system that's going to bring justice to us. So I think we have to recognize the madness and the insanity that the due process itself is. 7 years, 5 years, 4 years, I mean, n number of years, how are we supposed to measure this absence? How are we supposed to accept that students from this very university, Sharjeel Imam, Umar Khalid, Hem Mishra, have been incarcerated for so long, and it does not irk us, it does not, I mean, how are we not disturbed? How are we just continuing with our lives? And against the backdrop of what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Palestine, it all just leads me at least to realize that if there's nothing that we can do, if we cannot collect funds for the people of Gaza begging for our money, if we cannot stand in a protest for Sharjeel Imam or Umar Khalid, the least that we can do is bear witness to the atrocities that they are being subjected to. That is the least we can do. And it's a powerful thing to just bearing witness that I saw what you did and I know what you exactly did. So you cannot erase their suffering, you cannot erase their struggles, you cannot say that there was no Sharjeel Imam, he gave no speech, he was never arrested. We saw him with our own eyes and we are going to bear witness that he was illegally and unjustly incarcerated. And if that's all we can do, we should do it. And that is why I feel this book is a powerful document, because it does just that. It bears witness to the state excesses of India. I will now end my words with a sher. It goes, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting how it starts. आखिर हम ही मुजरिम ठहरे जाने किन किन जुर्मों के, आखिर हम ही मुजरिम ठहरे जाने किन किन जुर्मों के, फ़र्द अमल थी जाने किसकी, नाम हमारा लिखा था। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, थैंक यू वेरी मच।